Welcome to the 18th ToKini Andy Kanji lesson. Today we're going to cover the meaning, building blocks, writing, historical evolution where applicable, and a story to memorize each of the following kanji. We'll also learn the parts and radicals needed for those kanji. Today, there are no new parts. But stick around to the end of the lesson where we'll be doing a quick quiz to help everything stick. By the way, check the pinned comment below this video to see why we are not learning readings for each kanji just yet. Standing over here on my left is a kanji that means stand. Not left because we already covered that. Off to a good start. Let's go. The official radical of stand is itself, stand. Going by stroke order though, we can break it down into the parts pot lid and 8 horse leg crown, if we were so inclined. I prefer to think of it as a single pictographic part. We'll have stories for each at the end of this section though. There are 5 strokes in stand. We start with the 2 strokes in pot lid, dot on top, followed by the horizontal 1 stroke. We then draw the strokes below it exactly like 8 horse leg crown, except that the legs of the upside down horse are longer than usual. To me, the finished product always looked kind of like a big ceramic vase standing in the corner of a fancy rich person's house or something. Anyway, as if there aren't enough pictographs of people just standing there in the world of ancient kanji, here is yet another. A pictograph of a person standing on the ground. I don't even think this one needs an explanation or story, but we made one anyway. It turns out the parts we chose seem to have no historical basis, and the real parts were originally big and 1. But there are already quite a few kanji with big and 1 as parts, and this does not have that stroke order. Instead, it's much more along the lines of the parts that we chose. So for our stories, we went with, we stand a pot lid on the upside down horse because it can't stand. As in, the horse can't stand. So we're being jerks by putting a pot lid on its upturned legs and laughing at it, I guess? Or we could say, pictograph of a person trying to stand on the ground. This weird guy. Remember that it's a good idea to pause the video after each story and really try to imagine it, or to create a story of your own that will help you remember the kanji even better. Make sure the story contains the meaning and every single part in some way. Do you hear that sound? I think it's our 89th kanji, which means sound. Sound is its own official radical, but we can break it down into the parts stand and day. Well, actually, I found out just the other day that this may technically be according to on the bottom, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'm sticking with the original story I wrote before I found that out. There are 9 strokes in sound. We start with stand on top. I guess it's appropriate that it's standing on top. Puns aside, remember to keep the 5 strokes in stand sort of scrunched together on top of the kanji. We then go ahead and draw the sun beneath. The historical form of this kanji is nearly identical to that of word, except that there was usually an extra line or 2 added to this one to differentiate the two. As a whole, it was an ideograph of word above mouth, indicating the things that come out of one's mouth, i.e. sounds. The current top part is stand, which is apparently an abbreviation of word in this case, and the bottom is supposedly according to, as opposed to day, which is appropriate for indicating the meaning of sound as well, I guess. On a side note, the earliest form of this kanji looks a lot like a happy robot. I feel like I've seen this guy somewhere. For our story, we're going with, if you stand on the sun, you can't help but make a lot of sound. Poor guy. If you don't like the sound of that, make sure to hit the like button. The stand guy uses likes as fuel to get him off the sun. When we originally planned this series, this kanji was only supposed to be a part, because this is a very common enclosure for other kanji. We were then going to teach it as a kanji in N4. But for some reason, when we ran out of the gate at the actual start of this series, we forgot about that plan. It somehow found a way to slip through the gate and into the video series as a kanji, though we won't be learning any words for it until N4. Well, maybe I'll sneak in one word. That one word could be gate. How do you say gate in Japanese? Mom. It's a gate, mom. I can't pull it off. The official radical of gate is mom. We can break it down into a staff, sun, and feathered broomstick if we're so inclined, but I think this works fine as its only part. You can use those in your own story if you like, though. There are 8 strokes in gate. We start with the first vertical staff stroke on the left. We then draw the upside down and backwards L stroke, like the one in mouth or sun. But this one stops in the top half of the kanji. Next, we draw the horizontal stroke in the middle of sun and close it in on the bottom. We then move over to the part on the right. I have a really hard time making these next few strokes look right, but we start with the small vertical stroke in the sun part on this side. It should be roughly the same height as the sun on the left. We then draw the top horizontal stroke and the feathered broomstick stroke as a single stroke, indicating that it really isn't feathered broomstick. Make sure to sweep this stroke in towards the middle. Finally, we add the last 2 horizontal strokes in this little sun. The historical version of this kanji is exactly how I imagined the story for it, which I actually wrote before looking at the historical forms. They look exactly like 2 Wild West saloon doors. Explanations describe them as just 2 doors facing each other, or next to each other. But I can't unsee what I've seen. Our story for this one is, just like I said, a pictograph of a gate. Think Wild West saloon doors. You see that sun in between the doors on the gate kanji we just learned? Well, between is a meaning of this kanji, but because the only N5 words with this kanji in them have to do with time, we went with its other meaning, span of time. The official radical of span of time is gate, and the parts we've already said, gate and sun. There are 11 strokes in span of time. The struggles on this one are the same as those in gate, for me at least, balancing the part on the right with the one on the left. But anyway, we draw the first door on the left. You might then be tempted to draw the sun in the middle, but because enclosures on top of other parts are usually written first, we actually draw the door on the right next. Finally, we draw a fully fledged sun down beneath the saloon doors in gate, or perhaps inside of them, or between them. The original form of this kanji had moon inside the gate instead of sun. It represented seeing the moon through a gate at night, or between the crack in the open doors, and had a meaning of looking out from between something, originally. For our story, we're going with a scientist measures spans of time by watching the sun move through the opening in the saloon gate. If you're enjoying your span of time here, make sure to get subscribed. There's going to be a lot more videos just like this one over the coming years. It's going to be years, isn't it? Listen, I know you're probably tired of listening to my stupid voice and my stupid puns by now, but there's only a little bit left to listen to in this lesson. Because this last kanji means, listen. Probably the last pun I'm allowed to do today. Well, that's fine because it's the last kanji anyway. The official radical of listen is ear. Logical enough. The parts are clearly a gate and ear. There are 14 strokes in Listen. Just like in the kanji span of time, we write the entirety of the gate enclosure first. Left side followed by right. We then draw the ear inside the gate. Remember that even though the kanji for ear looks a lot like the kanji for eye, the stroke order is quite different. We start with the horizontal line on top, followed by the vertical stroke on the left. We then draw the 2 strokes inside the ear, followed by the enclosing bottom stroke, which we draw at a slight upward angle left to right. We then draw the final vertical stroke cutting down through the final horizontal stroke, but usually staying within the gate, or stopping on the same plane as the final sweeping stroking gate. Most explanations of the historical form of this kanji state that the ear part indicates the meaning, and the gate just indicates the Chinese reading. But one dictionary matched the story I wrote almost exactly. And I wrote the story before even buying said dictionary. It states that the kanji listen represented hiding by a gate, and, although you couldn't see inside, listening to what was happening. For some reason, the earliest form looks like a lemming from that game Lemmings, blowing on a horn, or perhaps with its ear up to a wall listening? What a game that was. Wow. So yeah, our story is very similar to the description in that dictionary. A scientist listens to the sounds coming from the saloon gate. I guess a scientist because I imagine they don't spend a whole lot of time in saloons, but are curious about what goes on in them? I'll have to ask past Andy about that sometime. It could just be because scientist was in the story from the last kanji. But anyway, please share any stories you made for the kanji in this video down in the comments. It might help someone who our stories did not help. Which brings us to the Lesson 18 quiz. In this section of the video, I'll show you a flashcard with the English meaning for a kanji. Pause the video when we show each card and try to remember how to write that kanji. Next, write it on your hand with your finger or on a piece of paper. Then press play and see if you were right. The best way to remember kanji you just learned is to search your memory for the story we taught you, or the one you made based on the English word on the flashcard. Our first card is stand. Next is listen. Just a few more. Here's span of time. And then there's sound. Finally, we have gate. Let us know how many you got right down in the comments. See what I did there? Stand and listen for a span of time to the sound at the gate. You can learn the next 5 kanji by clicking here, if the video is already out. If you don't want to wait, you can continue learning with our level 1 kanji flashcard deck for ANKI on ToKiniAndy.com. We're also releasing kanji series videos early for all the members there, so check it out if you want a head start.